Marketer of the Day, number 498. Fundamentals, Freedom, Hiring, and Scaling with Nicole Wipp. Hey everyone, we're so glad you're listening. We're talking right now with Nicole Wipp, and if you want to look her up, that last name is spelled W-I-P-P. And Nicole is the founder and CEO of Wipp Enterprises LLC, which is a consulting and training firm that provides a range of leadership, team creation, team building, and retention services to large companies and to the small business and entrepreneur market, such as NicoleWipp.com. And she also leads a highly successful boutique elder law firm. So Nicole, glad to be talking to you.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Glad to have you. So what's on your mind lately? What has you fired up?
I just love doing anything related to building my business. So we're at the beginning of the year. It always feels like a fresh start at the beginning of the year. So I'm really excited and fired up for 2018.
Well, great. So, what sort of things specifically? It's one thing for some people to be, fired up and ready to go and take action, but what kinds of things are you looking forward to that maybe you didn't have time to or didn't do in previous years?
So this year, we're going to be rolling out several new programs in my consulting and training business. One is related to helping entrepreneurs build and grow really strong entrepreneurial teams that help the entrepreneur make money instead of, looking at their team as an expense, but how do you actually leverage the team members to make even more money? And do it in a way that doesn't suck the life out of the entrepreneur. So we have a program that we ran as a beta in 2017. I'm really excited to be making that a much bigger one for 2018. Also, some great programs that are crossover into our corporate market clients, which are helping people in the corporate market or our entrepreneurial clients really develop better leadership skills. So a very similar kind of notion to what we do with the team stuff, but really on an individual level.
Okay, well, great. Well, lots of cool things to unpack there, and I like your how you set up that kind of the problem and sort of the solution of that team thing. Of that, maybe some people they realize that they can't do it all themselves, but then they dread hiring a team because of the added expense. But then the goal is to hire a team that will make you even more money, so that way it's just a total no-brainer. So I'm interested in finding out how do you get to that sort of mindset? How do you undo maybe those bad habits of the hesitating, of the thinking the worst into needing a team? How do you maybe fix your head in that way?
Well, one of the things I think that happens, especially to people that are newer in their entrepreneurial journey, is that there's this perception out there that you really have to be able to do it all. And part of this perception happens because, there's a lot of sort of guru types out there that feed it to you that here you are and you can do all these things, or here's your magic bullet, and here's the next cool marketing trick, or the new sales thing, or your new funnel. And that's all great. I mean, I am probably one of the biggest fans of great marketing and sales training that there is. But the problem is that we really need to get back to fundamentals. A lot of times, and especially if you're newer in your journey, you absolutely need to focus on fundamentals first instead of the next new shiny object, which is hard for some of us. Some of us are very attracted to shiny objects. I happen to be one of them. And so, but the idea is that if you really want to grow a great business, you have to start thinking about your business in terms of scalability. And the only way that you're really going to be able to scale your business in a way that doesn't involve more of you is by having the right team. So that's the first fundamental realization that people need to come to. Then the second realization you need to come to is that building a team is literally not as simple as just hiring somebody. What I see all the time, and even by very experienced entrepreneurs, is that they're like, oh, I need somebody to be doing customer service, or I need somebody to help me build my funnel, or whatever their supposed need is. And then they just are like, does anybody know anybody that's good at this? And then you hire somebody, and then it turns out to be a disaster. And there's so many reasons why that happens. So I just would say to people, and then that's when it becomes an expense. And that's what people fear. So the idea is to use a very specific and thought through process to hiring somebody before you just jump in. And then realizing that that's possible and that you can have a process that's going to make sure that the person that you hire is the right one instead of just guessing, and also a process to make sure that that person can help you make money instead of just guessing.
Yeah, that's great, and I can definitely relate to maybe in the past hiring like the wrong way. Like I still don't hire as much as I should, but early on I kind of had some bad luck in just doing what you described there, just kind of hiring like a friend of a friend, and then being in the kind of situation where it really. And I'm a programmer, so I was hiring another programmer, and I felt like the whole time he was just like trying to test me out and see how much he could get away with. Like any corner to be cut, anything I didn't check seemed to be undone. And it seemed like at the time I kept having to go back and forth and back and forth, and even things that were gone on earlier, he kind of like seemed to break again. And I remember just like getting out of the whole situation thinking, like feeling really discouraged. And I didn't realize until years later that I should have done a better job of hiring him. I should have maybe been quick to fire him and swap him out with someone else. But I think I sort of fell into a lot of the traps that you mentioned there.
Exactly. And one of the other issues that you sort of alluded to is, and this happens, and I'm not saying that you were this person, but I know that I have definitely been this person, and I know a lot of people I work with are this person, is there's very often so much of why somebody doesn't work out is literally our fault. And it's because we don't know, like the skill set that makes you really great at your business, the skill set that makes you good at making money in your business, the skill set that makes you really good at delivering whatever your product or service is, or whatever that is 9.999 times out of 10 a totally different skill set than it is to hire and manage a person that's going to help you do those things. And that's another thing that a lot of people just don't really realize in the beginning, is that, when we first hire, this has been my experience, and I know a lot of other people's, is that you're sort of like, what is wrong with this dope? Like, I hired this person. This isn't rocket science. Like, why are they so difficult? Why are they causing so many problems? Why are they? And we get into that a lot of times where we're sort of placing the blame on the person that we've hired. And yeah, they might be a dope, and they might be inept, and they might not be smart. There's a lot of things that they actually can be. But part of it is we have to also step back and say, what am I doing wrong as a leader of a team that's causing this to even happen?
So what is happening there in that situation? Is it like lack of people skills, not explaining enough, not having the processes to check up on them? Like, where is the breakdown happening there?
All of the above, right? And this is problematic because if you're a person that normally would consider themselves to be a people person, and then you're not having good people skills and managing people, oh boy, does that feel, that's not something that people ever want to hear. But then if you're not a natural people person, hearing that you need to be a good people person is also something you don't want to hear. So either way, it's not good. But it really is about, first of all, I think the first and foremost thing that people miss, and is the biggest problem in hiring for entrepreneurs, is that you're not hiring the right person for you. And the reason why I really put emphasis on that is because what I need in my business and for my personality and the way that I work and the things that I'm really great at and the things I need to really be offloading is going to be a completely different thing than what you need, for example. And so why would I be coming to you, asking you, for example, if you know anybody to work in this X position for me? Because the reality is what I would need in that situation and what you would need are two totally different things. And so the very first step is really getting clarity on that. And that's something that takes a little bit of work. So that is an example of a really big, huge missing component that then causes all those other things that you just mentioned to become problems.
Okay, so I'm not quite yet understanding what you're saying here, but I'm hoping that you can clear it up. So what does
Sure.
that look like exactly? Like if you hire someone that maybe they're right for the job, but they're not right for you, does that mean like it's a matter of like maybe if you're hiring, you're not as detail oriented, or you want to give someone more freedom, or you want to check up on someone, or like what does that really mean to hire someone who's good at what they do, but also good for you?
So, okay, I will give you a very specific example as it relates to me because it's just, I could go on and on, but I work with a lot of entrepreneurs that are very similar to me in style. So, some of you that are listening may resonate with this, but somebody may not. So that's why I'm also saying that this might not be you, and you have to be clear on that. But okay, an example. So I tend to be a very idea oriented person that loves, loves, loves to try new things. And I also am not a person that likes to do detail, although from a quality standpoint, detail is extremely important to me. So it isn't that I don't like detail. I love detail. It's essential, and you better be doing the details when it comes to my business if you work with me. But I personally don't ever want to touch a detail. And so that is an example of where I might be working with somebody that I really need them to be very, very detail oriented, and really dot the I and cross the T kind of person. But they cannot expect from me that I'm going to be the same for them, and I need to exactly manage them in a way that their expectation of me doesn't match with my expectation with them, that they understand what their limits are to what they should be expecting from me. And then how do we work that through together? Does that help? Does that make more sense?
Yeah, it does. So the things that you expect from someone might not match up to what you yourself would like, what you yourself are providing.
Exactly. And that's deliberately meant to be that way in certain circumstances because a good example of this would be, so if anybody works with me in an administrative role, let's say, for example, when I say administrative role, I'm talking about the person that's getting things done on a day-to-day basis. So it's an existing process that's already in place in my business, and now it needs to be executed with the same level of quality and detail time and time again. That would be an example of what I mean. Well, I can promise you that if somebody expects me to fulfill that role, if I expect that even out of myself, ultimately I'm sort of doomed to failure because even though I can do it, I'm capable of doing it, just like we're all capable. And so you can think of a lot of things in this world. This is part of the self-awareness piece is like, think of the things that you're capable of doing. But if I asked you to do it day in and day out, that you would want to put a knife in your eye, right? Like you don't want to be doing this task day in and day out. And that's going to be different for many of us, right? Like we don't all have the same things that really suck the life out of us. So if I work with somebody though that is what I'm hiring them for, first of all, they can't be like me. They can't be the kind of person that would suck the life out of them. But we do tend to hire people that are like us in that respect. And that's one of the very first big problems that people have. And then secondly, they cannot expect from me when they're executing the process that I'm going to be as all over it as they are. Because even though I expect them to be all over it, they can't expect the same from me because that's not how I operate. And so we want to work well together. So what is going to be the bridge between those two opposing ways of operating? That's where people really end up having a lot of problems. And that's the work that we do with people is how to bridge that gap.
Wow, yeah, there's it sounds like there's a lot of things to consider there. That number one, we might gravitate towards hiring basically a clone of ourselves, but that's not always what we want. And even if it is, then we, as the person managing that other person, aren't going to be providing the same inputs and outputs as that person. And the self-awareness part is really making a lot of sense here, just as far as knowing what you want out of someone else. And then also it sounds like a lot of the problems maybe happen because of maybe too much of an ego that we're unwilling to maybe look inside and unwilling to change or unwilling to try other things, that maybe we keep making the same mistakes with hiring and managing people. And if we just kind of took a deeper look into ourselves and maybe admitted we're wrong sometimes, we'd have a lot better results.
Oh, yeah. And, before anybody gets the wrong idea, I do want people to know that this is like, for me personally, was a massive game changer, was the day that I did say to myself, I need to put my ego aside and I need to realize that I'm as much, if not the biggest part of this problem. And that, yes, I may actually truly be hiring the wrong people, but whose fault is that? That's my fault. And then once I accepted that, then I was able to say, okay, then what do I need to do? And the difference for me, just so that everybody can really be clear about, what that can mean to you as well, was before I learned how to do this right, I was working, and this is not a joke, 800 hours a week. And today in that company, I only work 5 days a month and I make way more money, like probably 10 times more than I did when I was doing all the things myself.
That's living the dream, right? That's
Right.
80-20 rule in action right there.
Right. And so, when if you're working and you're an entrepreneur, think about it. Like, initially I think a lot of people think that the reason they're an entrepreneur is for money. And then there's two things, money and freedom, right? But money, and then people sort of get into the entrepreneurial journey, and then it's literally all about making money in the beginning, partly just because that's what you have to do to survive in business. But there comes a point at which that is no longer viable. Like, you can't just make money because you're killing yourself doing it. And if you take a step back and you say to yourself, am I going to be able to operate at this level for the next 20, 30, 40 years? Am I willing to do that? Is that really what I want to sign up for? Because that's what happened to me. I was like, am I really going to spend the next 20, 30 years of my career working this much, doing this many things? And the answer for me was a resounding no. And that's the day that I said to myself, being an entrepreneur, which I already knew this, but once you get into the sort of game of entrepreneurialism, it's sort of hard to remember this. But I had to remember that the point of being an entrepreneur was about freedom. And freedom is not just of money, it's also time and the ability to do things other than work in your business. And so the way to do that is by having the right people and processes in place. And that's when I was able to turn things around. And so that's what we help people do today, right? Because it sounds simple, but it's not easy. Just because something's simple doesn't mean it's easy.
Right, yeah. And I like how you explained your journey there, that like you kind of went through the phase of figuring things out, getting the business built up, and then maybe along the way forgot, at least temporarily, why you started in the first place. It became more about the work for the work itself, it sounds like. And then you finally got to that point where you're like, I can't sustain this. Something has to change. And about how long did it take to maybe make that transition from like total workaholic, the 100 hours a week, into the 5 days a month sort of lifestyle?
Well, unfortunately for me, it took several years because I didn't have the help and I didn't know what to do. So I had to figure it out. I think today the difference is that there's a lot more tools at our disposal to figure those things out. And I know lots of entrepreneurs that never figure it out. So the question becomes, how long are you willing to wait to figure it out? I think for a lot of people. And that's a personal question, right?
Yeah, but also kind of a scary question, because it's like, well, I don't know how much time I do have left. Or if the answer is 10 years, 5 years, that's 5 years you won't get back.
Exactly. And let me tell you, can I share with you also another story about why it's so important, and something that happened to me that made me realize, like, wow, this is so important?
Yeah, go for it. Oh, but by the way, what would you say if I said no? Would that be too mean?
I'd say no. I would say, okay, let's move
Okay,
on. Because
I'm just playing, but let's hear your story. I'm just being silly.
I can roll with anything. So you just you're the boss here. I'm just going with you.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'm curious about this other story now.
So a couple years into that journey of like figuring it out, um, I got into a situation where one day I ended up in the hospital. And this was completely unexpected. I was totally blindsided by this hospitalization. Well, I mean, I sort of knew that there was something wrong before I went into the hospital, but just like if I'm relatively young when this happened, I'm in my early 40s. And if you saw me and if you knew me, like I am considered by probably most people that know me to be a super healthy person because I do yoga and, I'm really like that kind of person, right? But here I am, I'm in the hospital. And not only am I in the hospital this day, but I end up spending a month in the hospital, which I don't know if you're listening, and you don't know anything about that, like to be in the hospital for a literal month in today's world is unheard of. Like nobody is in the hospital that long. Like that's crazy talk. And the reason that I was in the hospital that long was because I apparently had this rare lung disease that I didn't know about before this hospitalization, and nobody knew any. It took them a while to figure it out while I was there. So here I am. I'm the mother of a 4-year-old child at this point. I'm married. I have this business. All of this is going on. I'm in the hospital for a month, and then I have to get discharged, and then it takes me another 60 days to recover. So I'm literally out of my business for 90 days. Now, the moral of this story, though, is that not only did my business survive that, we went on that year to make more money than ever because I had built up the right team to make that possible.
Well, that's fantastic.
And so, we like for most people, like hearing that story, you're like, yeah, that's never going to happen to me. Well, trust me, I never thought it was going to happen to me. And when I got sick like that, everybody that knows me is like, if this can happen to you, Nicole Wipp, this can happen to anybody because I am like if you saw me, you'd think I was like Miss Healthy. Like there's nothing to give you any indication that I am an unhealthy person. It was something that just happened. Bad things happen to good people, right? Or bad things happen to people that try to do the right things. It's just what life is about. And so just if you think about that, I hope for everybody listening that nobody ever has something like that happen to them. But hey, what if you want to go for a vacation for a full week or 10 days or a month and you don't want to have to check in with your business? Like, could you do that without it imploding? For most people, the answer is absolutely not.
Right. So they need you to set them straight and to maybe reconfigure things and get them on the right track. So what sort of ways can you help with that? Like, I mean, actually, first of all, like, what's sort of your ideal client? Like, if someone's listening to our conversation today and they say, well, you know what, a lot of the stuff that Nicole says makes a lot of sense. How do they know that they're the right person to work with you and hear from you?
I think that we sort of work with a couple different categories of people. And so we work with people that either want to have much higher level of self-awareness as an entrepreneur. And what I mean by that is really getting into what should I be doing? What me, so if you're listening, this means you, be really doing in my business because there's something very freeing about having that level of clarity, about knowing what your highest and best value is to give to the world, and then just doing that all the time. If you've ever read the book Thinking Fast and Slow, it was a New York Times bestseller about a decade ago now, but he talks about, or the book Flow, there's a lot of idea about being in flow, right? And what it really means is the state of expending the least amount of mental effort while getting the most done. And so that is figuring out what that actually is for you. For many of us is a journey. It's not something that you intuitively exactly know what that is. So we want to work with people that care about that because that is one of your paths to freedom. And we can work we have things that we do with people that are more at the beginner level, so beginner entrepreneurs that want to be on the right path to moving their business in the right way. But to do full blown, like building your team stuff, we are usually working with people at a 6-figure and above mark.
Okay, fair enough. So you help people of sort of all shapes and sizes, different depending on their size. You help them in different ways, but it sounds like above all, people just need to have that goal of removing themselves as much from their business as possible, so that way they can just focus on what makes them great. And it sounds like as you're kind of explaining this problem, that maybe a lot of people out there don't even know that this is a problem, and maybe they should wake up to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so funny because I am also an attorney and I run a law firm. And I say this to my legal clients, and I'm saying this to your audience in this business as well, as it's what we don't know that hurts us.
Yeah,
Right?
that's so
Like, you know
true.
what you know, it's what we don't know that hurts us. And so this is one of the things that I really do think hurts entrepreneurs, definitely, because also all the problems around building a team are what I call the dirty little secret of entrepreneurship. And what I mean by that is that when you hire somebody that doesn't work out, and maybe you can, speak to this if you've experienced this, like if you hire somebody that works out, there's something about it that feels shameful to you as the entrepreneur, because it's sort of like, well, I made a bad decision hiring this person, or I don't know what the problem, like there's a lot of because it feels much more personal when you hire the wrong person. And you see other people doing it and it appears like they're successful. Although I will tell you that 9 times out of 10, their relationship with their team members are just broken as anybody else's. And so you feel shame about it and you don't really know who to turn to. So that's another thing. It's like, well, you don't know what to do about it. So you just accept subpar and non-productive team members that aren't really moving your business forward in the way that it should be. And these are things that I want to help entrepreneurs get rid of out of their lives.
Well, that's a great goal for you to have, and I think that yeah, no one wants to be stuck in that weird mediocre land of having these basically like hires that don't work out, or being unhappy with their team, and maybe they need some of this outside help that you provide to get things on the right track. So what sort of web page URLs, websites, resources do you have for us today to make sure that we do all these things correctly?
So the very best thing that you can do is, and you should do this, I would say, no matter where you are in your entrepreneurial journey, or even if you work at a company, because this is something that can be very enlightening to you. And I just know this because I've had so many people tell them that it has been. So it's a good resource. On my website, NicoleWipp.com, there is an 8-question quiz that you can take about your own sort of energy, where your entrepreneurial energy lies. And then when you go through the 8 questions on the back end, it'll give you the ability to access information about, okay, given that this is where your energy lies, this is who you need to hire if this is what you need, but beware of these are going to be your problems. Or this is who you need to hire, though, if this is what you need, but beware, this is going to be the problems. So it really gives you a lot of insight into maybe who you should be hiring, sort of where it starts that journey of self-awareness in a way that you might not have thought of before. And it can really be eye-opening and enlightening for you. So I think that's like the absolute best thing to do.
That's amazing, and that's eye-opening how you're saying that. Well, you take this test, you take this quiz, and then and based on your needs, it tells you who you're going to hire. But it sounds like there's always going to be some sort of problems. It's never problem free, but knowing what you're getting into will help you maybe manage those problems.
Right. I mean, listen, if you're an entrepreneur, and this is another, I would just want to say this as a sort of real important point, is if you're an entrepreneur and you're hiring a team, it is not possible, I don't think, to have a completely conflict-free team. Conflict is, first of all, something that it can be productive. Conflict can be absolutely productive, and when it's productive, should be absolutely welcome, because you do want people that are going to tell you you're wrong. and why you're wrong in a productive way. That's good. That's awesome. Oh my gosh. If you can find a good team member to do that, you need to keep them. Like, you're wrong, and these are the reasons why. So they can give you a different perspective. You may not agree with them at the end of the day, but it's great to have the other perspective. But it's never going to be conflict free. But that is what being a leader is about. And it's accepting your role as a leader. And so it's okay to have conflict in a team, but you have to be aware of where it's going to come from. You have to be aware of how to diffuse it and make it into this productive conflict.
I like it. Well, those are some really great insights there. And so for people to find this quiz, they go to NicoleWipp.com. And is it right there on the page, or is there a link to click, or is it easy to find?
Yeah, it's right there on the homepage. You'll see a thing that says Take the Entrepreneurial Instinct Catalyst. Click, and it'll take you straight to it.
Well, great. Well, I appreciate your advice, and I appreciate the stories that you're sharing with us today, and especially that last part there about how, like, you're never going to be conflict free. In fact, it can be a good thing. So NicoleWipp.com is the place to be. And any other links to drop here, or is Nicole Wipp just the number one spot?
Well, yeah, if you are an entrepreneur, NicoleWipp.com is the place to go. If you're somebody that works in a corporate environment and wants something that's more of a corporate team training, then that's WBENterprises.com is the place to go.
Okay, great. Fair enough. So corporate team training, WBENterprises.com, and for entrepreneurs, NicoleWipp.com. Great. So that way, depending on who you are, you can go to the right place, either Wipp Enterprises or Nicole Wipp. So thanks, Nicole, for stopping by and for sharing some of these kind of vulnerable stories and these case studies and telling us what we need to know in order to make the best use out of the time in our day and the best use out of whatever time we have left on the planet and all that. So that way, our dreams don't become these things that we end up hating or struggling against, or whatever all those usual traps that entrepreneurs fall into. So this way we can maybe think bigger, hire a team, and do all these things that maybe we should have done. I keep saying maybe a lot today, but things that we should have done years ago. And now that we're on the right track, we hired the team, get it done. So NicoleWipp.com. And thanks, Nicole, for stopping by and sharing some of this great stuff with us today.
Thank you.
Today's episode is sponsored by DoneForYouPodcasting.com. Is your podcast not what it should be? What if you could simply show up and have a team deal with content, outreach for guests, editing, production, social media traffic, and more? Check out DoneForYouPodcasting.com.